James, thank you so much for joining us on the You're Not Alone podcast today. I'm super excited to have you on, man. You've been a bright light and an inspiration for me for years. Let's see, I kind of got into this in like 2018, and you were one of the names floating around in the speakers circuit for sure. And so it's been fun, man, getting to know you. And I want to kick off the episode by just allowing you to talk to my audience. Give my audience a quick introduction on yourself and kind of your journey to this interview right now.
Zach, it is a damn pleasure, brother. What is good? Your hair is looking Italian
extra crispy
today. I like it. You're looking
crispy,
slick,
bro.
looking slick back. You're ready to step into a scene in The Godfather. I'm excited about it.
This shit wouldn't move in the wind, bro. Like it's crispy. It's got a crunch to it. It's that crispy bacon.
Brother, I'm so stoked to be on the show, man. Thank you so much for seeing my voice is a valuable one for your audience. I'm just pumped to be here, brother. A little bit about me. I'm a professional speaker who talks about the role that authenticity and vulnerability play in leadership. A big leadership nerd, but I also talk a little bit about mental health, mental wellness as well, particularly around men. I talk to men about why we choose cool over great. And I've been in the game for a minute. I've been full time for 11 years, and roots come from New York, as you can detect from my delightful sarcasm. And excited to be here with you, dude.
Yes, 100%. So many things I want to touch on. That program, Men, Work in Progress, touching on that, leadership, vulnerability, all things that I think you've got a hot take on. I'm curious though, as it pertains to your own journey with mental health, kind of what are the origins of that story? Where does it all begin? I know it begins in the Northeast. But where from there, map it out for us.
I was born by a river.
My God! Please continue.
That's it. It's a falsetto for the rest of the podcast. Buckle up. Born and raised in New York with two very loving parents. I'm very fortunate. They've been married 52 years and still enjoy each other. So that's it's a really cool example of love that has been set for me. I have two older brothers. I'm the baby by a lot. My brothers are 9 and 11 years older than me. So in many ways, I guess during my what they call formative years, I was an only child, right? Because my brothers were in college or starting life or attempting to do more mature things while I was still bopping around in middle school and high school. So yeah. But as far as like my mental health journey, I would say my self-awareness around my mental health, as far as my first acknowledgement of like, I don't know if this is right, was probably around high school.
Yeah.
In middle school, I had a lot of low self-esteem. I've always struggled with a low self-esteem around my physical appearance, and just the way that other people saw me, thought about me. I'm the kind of guy now who, because of what happened when I was younger, if you ever compliment me, I need you to like drill deep into the compliment and like go layers in order for me to actually believe you, and not that you're just placating me. And that a lot of that came up during high school. And I would say I didn't know I would say I was a procrastinator in high school, but I didn't know that was related to ADHD until college.
Right.
And I mean, back then, to date myself, I was from the ADD generation, right before everything became ADHD.
Right.
But ADHD was something that I learned about in college, but still didn't really know if I should medicate for it. And so I didn't. It wasn't really the thing yet anyway, to medicate for it. So yeah, the last piece of mental health journey, I guess, as far as like diagnosable stuff, is I just recently, I'm 39, I'll be 40 in a couple of months. And at the age of 38, I got diagnosed with anxiety. which is great. I got diagnosed with unspecified anxiety, and Zach, which is great because if there's one thing that someone with anxiety wants, it's to have an open door to potential other things, right? Unspecified anxiety. That's great.
Right.
Now I don't know what to do with that. That creates more anxiety.
It's a buffet. You can kind of nibble on this and that, a little bit of anxiety over here, a little bit of anxiety over there, just depending on what you're in the mood for. That's interesting. Unspecified anxiety. So at 38, you've received this more formal diagnosis. What, I guess that tells me that there was maybe you were experiencing some of those symptoms, which then prompted you to go see somebody. So what was kind of going on in your life where you were like, all right, I gotta address this again. We got to circle back. We got to hit that buffet of unspecified anxiety.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that were unspecified. And so I sought answers. But yeah, I started going back I went to counseling very little bit in college, and then went for a long time around the end of my first marriage. And then stopped going for about 3 years, and then, or maybe 4 or 5 years actually, and then started going again recently within the last year and a half or so. And what prompted going back to counseling was a number of things. One of them was my now wife. Her name is Tina. She's a badass. She and I could feel that, we were getting excited to potentially have a kid, but I could also feel like that just like causing me to spiral. And not spiral as in I don't want to have a kid, kids are dumb or anything like that, right? But more of just like well, what about this? And what about this? We got to figure out this, and how about this? And I could feel myself kind of spiraling. And then there were also some moments where I couldn't get out of my own way in some of those spirals. And I finally was like, all right, this isn't healthy. Right. I remember there was a New Year's Eve. Where there were all these options for what we could do that night. And Tina was like, well, I don't know if I really want to do this one thing or this other thing, but I had kind of already told her that we were going to go meet somebody at this one thing. And I have a big thing about letting people down and whatnot. And so like, I wound up like the night, yada, 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 long story short, wound up with me crying and us not doing anything because I was just like, I don't know how to make everybody happy right now. And I want to make everybody happy, but I can't. And so that's not like, people without anxiety don't spiral to a place like that. And my inability to catch myself was kind of like, I need to really start going to see somebody. And so that's kind of what prompted that. And then, as far as what prompted me to go through and get like the formal diagnosis and do all that, that was actually because I was of being an entrepreneur. There were so many things that I wanted to do, but so many things that kept getting put on the back burner, or just like, oh, I got time to fill, let me do that. But then I would procrastinate. And I just attributed a lot to my ADHD. And so I was like, let me try medication finally for ADHD. And so you got to do the formal testing. And so we did all that. And what came out of that testing was actually anxiety. Yes, I have some ADHD, but the anxiety actually rang louder than the ADHD, which is fascinating. My counselor was telling me that ADHD sometimes gets or anxiety and depression sometimes get misdiagnosed as ADHD a lot of times. And I did not know that. So anyway, that's kind of what prompted it.
I didn't know that either. So that's going to prompt a follow-up question. What are the, I guess, what are the symptoms that your counselor identified to say, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, maybe this is a little bit of ADHD, but this is actually much more the anxiety right now playing a factor in your ability to focus, overcome procrastination, like all of those types of situations that you were finding yourself in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it came back to a few things. One was perfectionism. And wanting to be perfect and wanting to be everything for everybody. but not always everything for myself. But like my Achilles heel in life is having a deep desire to be liked by everybody. And that causes me to be an accommodator, and it causes me to put others' needs ahead of mine, and yada, 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 which is, I'd rather be coming from that side than the other side. But it's still a thing. So that's a piece of it, was perfectionism around, and that perfectionism and anxiety hang out together for sure.
Yes.
And then also, I think couple of things that we were noticing was that with my inability to make a decision. And my inability to just be like, all right, well, I'm just going to do this, or let me just set the course here, and let me just try this, or let me do this. And so that's not necessarily only attributed to anxiety, but it certainly is something that someone with anxiety dwells even longer, and goes through all the options and kind of runs down the rabbit hole of each one of those things before they actually make a move. And I found myself doing that a lot, and doing it more and more as I got deeper and deeper into entrepreneurship. And then once we had a responsibility of, now I'm married, another responsibility of, we're having a kid, it's like, okay, all the holes are just getting deeper of responsibility. So I can spiral into them.
Yeah. So one quick question is the assessment you took. Do you remember the name of it by chance?
I don't. I remember it was like 7 hours long though.
Oh geez.
It was multi-level. There was some stuff that I did at home. And then there was also some stuff that I did in person, or over Zoom, I should say.
Okay.
And I forget what it was called.
Okay.
And it's saved somewhere on my desktop, but like a good person with ADHD, so are a lot of other things.
You don't even want to see my desktop right now. It is a mess, bro. It's bad.
Yeah.
And so, that is,
I don't remember what it was, what the assessment was. I'm trying to look right now, but I can't necessarily find it.
That's okay.
But it was a whole long thing. I know there was something that at the end of it, they were also able to determine my IQ and stuff like that too. So
maybe we'll be able to look that up after, and we can throw it in the show notes as a resource for people listening. Like, wait a minute, I think I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but maybe this is anxiety, and I need to take a deeper look at this.
Yeah.
2 themes you touched on though: the perfectionism and the inability to make decisions. I think super relatable. I think there are a lot of people that run into these challenges. Have you learned any skills, any tools, any tricks to first off, well, I want to address both, but I want to start with the perfectionism. Have you learned anything that's been helpful to kind of overcome that hurdle?
I worked long and hard to find the perfect way to overcome it. And man, I haven't. I think perfectionism is still something. I think first off, it was fascinating to get diagnosed. It was fascinating to get diagnosed with something that you didn't know you had. I mean, it wasn't like, it didn't blow me away, but it was like, I thought this was ADHD the whole time. And so a year ago, I found out that, or maybe even less than a year ago now, I was like, no, that's anxiety. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like I thought I was this person, and I thought, and it's not to say that everything, my whole world got rocked, but it is very interesting to think about. And I don't necessarily know, I don't know if I would have called myself someone who desired perfection before then, but the shoe fits as you kind of like deepen into it. So there's one resource, it's actually right here on my desk, that my counselor gave me. It's When Perfect Isn't Good Enough. It's a book, Strategies for Coping with Perfectionism. Yeah, but When Perfect Isn't Good Enough by Anthony and Swinson. Or Anthony, sorry, no H in that. Anthony and Swinson. And
that's formal, bro. Anthony's like, that's you know you're smart when your name's Anthony. I mean,
you're right.
You right.
You're right.
That's thoroughbred. That's a higher caliber level gentleman right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think some of the perfectionism, one place I'm really trying to have it not come out a lot, and I'm trying to really be conscious of it, is that I am a new dad. And so trying to take some pressure off of myself of being the perfect partner and the perfect dad and the perfect entrepreneur, and like trying to not do it all perfectly at the same time. And that's been an interesting journey for sure. And Yeah, so I think that's been stuff. I mean, as far as overcoming it, I think I'm still a work in progress with it. There's still a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that matter a lot to me, and I
Yeah.
think that's one thing I'm trying to work on, is that everything can't get all of your energy. So what deserves your energy right now? And that's something
Yes.
that I'm really trying to figure out, is like, you do not have an infinite supply. And so on any given day. And so what deserves your energy is a conversation I've been trying to have more with myself recently.
I love that. And that, we'll call the bag of cares. We won't use the other word. We're given an allotted amount of things to care about. There's another word to describe the bag.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
And I think that's something that my wife and I talk about all the time, is like, there's just only so many things that I can care about, generally speaking, in life. And then if you drill down into a day, like, you've got energy for like 2 to 3 big tasks. And then after that, the energy levels just, for me at least, diminish fairly quickly, and one of those bags is going to go towards the gym, trying to get my physical fitness on. Something's going to go, 1 or 2 are going to go to the business. And then, like you said, I mean, you're a new father, you're a husband, so that you can't, there's an allotted amount of energy that can be distributed in any given 24-hour period. And I think for me, like, coming to the realization that I might want to move mountains today, but realistically, that's just not going to happen. Like, there's too many things on my to-do list, and really ultimately only a few actually matter.
Yeah.
And that's kind
real,
of where
man.
I've landed.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's a really cool outlook. I am someone who, like the physical fitness piece, and as far as anything self-care related, that's why signing up for counseling was so important for me, because it's like, you have something to do. You have an hour a week that it's about you.
Yep.
And the reason why I'm able to go to counseling and not feel bad about it is because I'm paying for a service.
Yep.
Right. Because otherwise I have this thing behind me that's like, you're burdening people. Right. Even though that's not the truth. Right. We're not burdening our friends. We're not burdening our loved ones. I mean, we could certainly get to that point, but it's that line is much further away than I think we give our friends credit for and give ourselves credit for.
Right.
So yeah, but that, you talk about, giving your bag here and giving your bag there. For me, I don't know if this is, in some ways I love this and I think it's badass, and in some ways it's not. But I live my life based on what I want to be said in my eulogy.
You've told me that before.
And so what?
You've told me that before. I love that. I vibe with that. It's yeah. So anyways, keep going.
Yeah, man. I think it's a cool concept because, I'm out here trying to write a cool story. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm also out here trying to impact lives. And even if it's temporarily, in the moment, just even if a cashier, a flight attendant, a server, whatever. Right. Like, I think there's power in having congruency about how would people talk about you. And so that's beautiful. And so I'm trying to write cool stories so that people can also come to my funeral and share cool stories as well.
Yeah.
That's also a lot of pressure to put on every interaction. It's a lot of pressure to put on everything. And there's times where who's ever right in front of me, they win. But if that's not my wife or my child, then that's not always the best, right? Like, there's moments where, or myself, right? Like, I'm never in front of myself, so I'm never number one. And so it's interesting to think about, right? They always, that cheesy analogy they always use with the oxygen masks on the airplane, right? Well, make sure you put your own oxygen mask on and put it on other people. Let me tell you what would never happen in a million years. Me putting my own oxygen mask on first. I'm just hoping I put there's a few oxygen masks on and then remember to put mine on. But that's the way I live my life. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's about remembering that I'm also allowed, to go back to your analogy, to have a bag.
Yes.
And that's what I'm working on right now. And so there's like these two, I think I may have told you this when we were hanging out in Cali recently, but like, there's these two warriors inside of me, and their legacy and there's presence. And legacy frequently wins when I need presence to win, probably a little bit more. Because if you're just in the moment, you're not worrying as much. You're just enjoying what is for what it is, and just allowing yourself to just be. There's a lot of power in that instead of worrying what will be. And so I'm working on that balance in my life.
That resonates with me a lot. Because when I was going through my values, legacy was one of the things. Yeah. And I do think that there's something powerful in legacy. Like, I love what are people going to smack on the tombstone when I'm gone type of deal? What are they going to say about me? What are the stories they're going to tell? I mean, your child, dude, is growing up in a household where the mom and dad started a business. They're speakers. Like, you wrote a book. Like, that's dope. I think about that, and I'm filled with immense gratitude and I'm sure you feel the same way with how we get to live our lives. I mean, this is literally a part of just my reality. Just getting to interview cool, dope people, and yeah, that is part of your legacy. And what I noticed, and it was a rule that I had written in my brain that I didn't know. So when you were talking about this, it was funny when this became a realization for me, and I've been slowly chipping away at it. My rule was that I never wanted people to feel uncomfortable. So I would always go above and beyond to ensure that everybody around me felt heard, everybody around me felt comfortable. And that's like on my spirit. That's like something that, for me, you talked about this deep desire to be liked by everybody. I think that was part of the rule that I wrote for myself. And it just, to your point about the energy levels and kind of where you're at right now, I started to notice for me, like, there are some days, dude, like, I wake up and I'm tired. Now, I'm not going to go around the world being a dick. Like, that's not the plan. Like, I'm not going to now be an asshole to you because I'm tired.
Yeah.
But how much energy I exert, like, your mood and how you feel, some of that is on you, right? Like, you have to cultivate that for yourself. And I don't want to be the one to come through and bring you down. I still believe in that heavily as my legacy, but like, do I need to be the one that in every interaction that I have ever for the rest of my life, be the one where it's my responsibility to lift you up at all times? And as an advocate, that was something that, it was a rule that I had written for myself. You're a mental health advocate. You've been through some really dark times. Now it's your job to go out there, and every single interaction needs to be uplifting. And it's like, dude, sometimes I'm just trying to get out of bed and make sure that I like get a few things done, like, and just be good to my wife. Like, that's sometimes where I'm at. You know what I mean? And so I started recognizing this like unwritten rule for myself that I had to make everybody feel good around me. And it's a lot of work. It's a big responsibility.
It is. Yeah, that's what my counselor says. I haven't noticed yet. But no. It is, man. It really is. And it's one of those things where, that classic line, if not you, then who, right? Yep. But that's, you're allowed to have those days. We're allowed to be humans. We're allowed to have crappy days. We're allowed to, we're allowed to be mad. We're allowed to be sad. We're allowed to be jealous. That doesn't all of a sudden mean we're not a good mental health advocate, or we're not a good helper, or we're not a good teacher, or whatever, right? Like, if anything, we're better because of that. But we can say that in hindsight, but it's hard to say it in foresight. And one thing that you talked about the power of comfort, and I love that word. I actually I had a meeting with my counselor yesterday where I talked to her about this. Shout out to Sarah, by the way. I'm sure she's listening.
Shout out Sarah. She's tuned in.
I was talking to her about this yesterday, and it was around this idea. It was around this idea of, I am, like, if you look at, Strengths Finder, Strengths Quest, like the top 35 strengths, right?
Yep.
The Gallup stuff. So anyway, so two of my top 5 are includer and futurist. And couple both of those with someone who has an immense amount of emotional intelligence. I believe I am of high EQ, and
You're a gentleman and
I
a
tested
scholar.
that way too. I now can prove that. But, but still, shout out to that long ass fucking thing I took. But still, but it's interesting because like you talked about the idea of comfort. And so I'm an includer and I'm a futurist. And so I'm anticipating social scenarios in rooms. I'm anticipating social moments of like, oh, look at that person, or what's going on with them, or I bet they need this, or I bet that, right? And it's like not quite a fortune teller, but like you're anticipating people's needs, right? Like the top hotels do, right? 5-star hotels that's how they make their money, because they anticipate their clients' needs.
That's right.
And that's a lot of pressure to carry instead of just be at the party. You're not even the host of this party. You got invited to this party. Why are you trying to take care of everybody? Sit down, have a wine, and just chill, bro. Like, what are you doing?
Get a plate, fill up a little plate, get your little
get you some charcutes, and let's just manja, my guy.
Get a little charcutes and a little bit of vino and just chill back, my brother. It doesn't.
Have Zach come over with the fried ravioli. Watch your mouth. Don't ask him about his brother. You know what I mean? Look at his hair on this guy.
Hey. No, I mean, can you whatever party you're talking about, man? I want to be there.
Yeah, I agree.
It sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
if you want to
I think that's the biggest
me,
takeaway from this podcast so far.
If you want to give me a 5-star treatment, man, at the next house party, brother, please, by all means. My wife and I are on the next flight to Minnesota. Next flight.
It snowed here yesterday. Are you still sure?
No, never mind. I take it back.
Yeah, man. April 15th. There's snow back on the ground here. So
yeah, that's why I moved. I got poor circulation. I mean, my hands are cold right now. And it's 70 degrees, brother. I need the sun.
Yeah. Zach, I'm wondering for you, like that, where does that need to create comfort in others come from? Like, what's the story? If you don't do it, what's the story that gets written by yourself?
So it's exactly what you were talking about, which is funny because I had it written down and I was going to steer it in that direction. It's all tied around self-esteem. It's all tied around not wanting to lose love in every capacity. So like the deepest of love, like the romantic love.
Yep.
Then there's that family love. And then there's that friend love, which has a degree in across every category, is that degree of acceptance. Not wanting to feel the tinge of rejection or the tinge of discomfort that comes when, you say something like, something as simple as like your friend's like, hey man, like we should hang out on this day at this time. Like, do you want to do that? And it's like, sorry, man, I can't do that day and that time. And then they feel disappointed. And I don't want them to feel disappointed.
No, it's the worst.
Right?
Yep.
So it's like these written rules in my head where it's like, no, I cannot make any person in my life feel an uncomfortable emotion. Therefore, I will eat the uncomfortable emotions so that they don't have to. But it all boils down to self-esteem. So self-esteem is something I've struggled with my whole life too. And I do think that there's an anxiety component to that. Like when your fight, flight, or fear system is activated to any capacity, like look at me out here talking fight, flight, or freeze, man.
You, brother?
Look at me. No, when that system, when that stress response is activated, I do think that your brain is playing this game of tug of war, right? You've got that frontal lobe, that's the kind of the CEO of the brain, the analytical side, and then you've got that limbic system, that stress response activated, and so you got this game of tug of war going on, and it's like what you said, I don't want to say the devil and the angel, but the kind of the battle inside.
Yeah.
Which one are you going to let win? And so for me, I know for a fact that's where it stems from. It's like the self-esteem and the desire for people to deeply like me because I get value from that. And I'm also terrified of quote unquote losing love or being rejected. And I was a sensitive little boy. I really was. Like, I was such a sensitive little boy. I used to cry all the time and I used to get made fun of for that. And it's so funny. Like, I was like, if only I would have had the maturity or the foresight, to use one of your words, to lean into that a little bit, even as a younger man, I think I would have been a lot better off, because now I lean into it. I'm like, bro, I cry, man. You know, and I talk to my friends openly, and, you know, I'm one of the first ones to be like, I love you guys. Like, I will say it. Like, I'll say it to their face. I'll say it in the group chats, like really breaking down. Even now it looks like we're going to dovetail into men work in progress, but like breaking down some of those things. But it all stems from self-esteem. What about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a lot of that. I think, yeah. So I think that's the biggest piece for me as well, is self-esteem and wanting to be liked. I think it's also wanting other people to feel value and never having to question their value like I sometimes question mine. Right? It's like, hey, let me bring you peace, and let you know that you're good. Right? Like you don't need to worry. You don't need to or anything like that. Like, you just be. Right. You're allowed to be. Now, a lot of times I call myself a pharmacist, right? Because I pass out the drugs. No, you got to take care of yourself. No, believe in yourself. No, you're hot. No, you're worth it. No, you're good enough. Right. But I don't take the drugs myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no, that's not for me. I just give them out.
Yeah.
And so that's what and that's one of the biggest things that I'm working on right now, is knowing that I also deserve peace. I also deserve compassion. I also deserve, to be able to chase my dreams. And sometimes in the moment on any given day, that means being like, no, I can't talk to you right now because I'm working on something. Yeah. But, can we talk tomorrow? Right? Like, is your situation urgent? Probably not. But if someone asks me for help in the moment, I'm immediately like, drop everything. What are we doing? Right? Like, you're going to be on my podcast at some point as well, Diner Talks with James. And I'm going to shoot you over my calendar link, brother. And you can literally pick any time on my calendar. Yeah. Right. Anytime you want. Yeah. Whereas I should probably block off mornings or block off afternoons, or just be like, when do I get to do deep work? Yep. Right. Like, little things like that are things that I'm working towards and need to do. It comes back to boundaries. So.
Yeah. Oh my God. So now I got to write boundaries down here. Is there anything that you've done to help build your self-esteem? Is there any tools, anything that you've seen? Because for me, I think coming to terms with some of the quote unquote things that maybe I didn't like about myself, like creating like acceptance around those and almost leaning into it versus like trying to shy away from it has boosted my confidence and self-esteem. I don't know, like, do you have anything that you do that kind of helps?
A couple of things that are helping, because I think I'm still very much on the journey.
Yeah,
One
me too, by the way.
Marrying a badass woman and attempting to believe her.
Preach.
Right?
Preach.
Like, attempting to believe her when she says what she says about me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, maybe I am actually hot in her eyes. Maybe I am actually,
bro.
You know what I'm saying?
Like,
all that kind
too.
of stuff.
I mean, people not watching the video need to know you got swag. I mean, one of the best dressed dudes in the room every single time, and the beard is always on point.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And what I would say is that a lot of that stuff is a shell, right? It's like, let me have you focus on how I'm dressed as opposed to how I look. And because then I think you'll you'll pay more attention. Right. And those are all stories that I write. Right. Yep. And so, but I think there is, that's a big thing. Meditation has helped, of just kind of like slowing down the world a little bit. And even with someone with ADHD and anxiety, like, meditation's really, I can't do it for long, but I've learned to not beat myself up about it. The Headspace app actually helped me out a lot with that. Yeah. Because in just starting with it, and that delightful British man, he kind
Andy
of said,
he's so
right,
great.
Right. That's the dude right there.
So great.
But just he came from it a very realistic approach. Right. Of just like, we're going to start with 3 minutes. I'm like, 3 minutes? Here I am thinking we got to start with 2 hours. Right. Yep. So anyway, that's been a big thing. Counseling obviously has helped immensely, and just helping to rewrite some of the story. Medication has helped also because I don't spiral I still spiral because I'm a human, but I don't spiral as long or as deep.
Right.
And so that's been helpful. And then I think for me, one of the analogies that I use is this concept of look back at it. And I'm not talking about the cake here. But what I am talking about is that we're all climbing a mountain. Right. Yeah. Every one of us is climbing a mountain, and we're all on our own mountain. We don't exactly know how much further we have to climb. It's a little cloudy up there, and whatnot. And it feels like we've been climbing forever. And and by looking up, I mean, if you ever climbed a mountain before, it feels like you never get to the top, right?
Yeah.
And we're looking over and we see other people on their mountains. Like, look how freaking high they are. Look how high they are. And we start comparing ourselves to them. But we don't know where those people got dropped off on the mountain. Privilege drops us all off at different heights, right? And also, they're also looking at us and where we are on our mountain. All we ever do is look up or to the side. We never look back and be like, oh shit, look how far I've climbed. That's pretty dope. And so that's something that I've been trying to allow my success to do, right? The fact that I've been full-time for 11 years as a professional speaker, I'm doing 80 some odd keynotes a year, and have been consistently for a number of years, right? Like that, it's at some point in time, I needed to just stop for a second and be like, oh, wait, not everybody's doing this. Like, this is pretty cool. And you're doing well, and you can say no, or you can raise your rates, or you can, right? Like, so there's also some of that where it's like every once in a while, we just got to look back and be like, oh, wait, shit, I am doing it. Right.
Yes.
And in all facets of life, not just career. So I would say those are the biggest things that I've tried to do.
So I'm going to ask about that process with the counselor, but I love this analogy so much because, what the word that keeps coming to mind as you're talking about this analogy of looking back at it, it's like gratitude. And it's so interesting. So you're 11 years in, this is the start of year 3. So it's April. So I'm a month into, almost. That's awesome. Matter of fact, this is the first month of year 3. So there we go. We're a month in. At the start, it was very much so survival mode. Pandemic hit. I'm a speaker. I'm like, okay, how are we gonna get this done? And it was everything was coming from this place of lack. And in the last year, I have, as things started opening back up and more opportunities coming in, etc. But am I at 80 keynotes a year? No, but I'm at a place where I am looking back at it, and I've been looking back at it now intentionally for probably, like I said, the last year, and it is amazing how much happier I am. Like, grateful is the word that comes to mind with what you're talking about, actually recognizing your accomplishments. And I'll tell you, bro, 11 years as a full-time speaker is, it's one of the biggest accomplishments because I like to devour content in this space. And I was listening to a podcast the other day. 90% of speakers don't make over 6 figs a year in their business. 90%. And then 1% is $1 million or more. So if you're doing 80 keynotes, I have to imagine you're up over that six-figure mark, or 80. I don't know if I said 80 or 90 just now, but you've accomplished something. And again, it's not about the money, it's about the impact. But you've got a child, you have to pay bills, you have to live, you're building a business. That's why you got into entrepreneurship. Right. That is an unreal accomplishment. Unreal. But that's like those are the things that like it's almost like that stop and smell the roses. That's like that's another way to talk about it, which is what you're describing. And I'm not for people listening, I'm not suggesting that if you were just slightly more grateful, your anxiety would go away or your depression would go away.
Yes, right.
What I am suggesting, I think what James is talking about is like on that journey to the top of your mountain, which we all get dropped out on, different parts of the mountain based on our upbringing, just how, the world we were born into. But that gratitude can help. It really can. Looking back at it really does help. And when you were saying that analogy, it hit me so much, because in my meditation today, when I was meditating, I was overcome with gratitude, because I was like, this is just unreal. Like, this is an unreal situation that I find myself in, where here in about 30 minutes, I'm going to hop on an interview with James freaking Robilotta, somebody that years ago I was just happy to know you. You know what I mean? And that is, to me, that's the journey. That's looking back at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's such a cool moment. And yeah, it's really beautiful. It really is beautiful. That's why, the fact that this is 3 years in, right? Your anniversary it's beautiful. It's something that I don't like. It's to the point with me where I don't even think my birthday necessarily matters, right? Like, I turned 40 this year. My Tina's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. Like, right? Like, I'm a straight white male who is raised with more than enough. Like, if I don't make it another year on earth, it's my fault. What the hell are we actually celebrating out here? Right. And but it's also some self-esteem in there, right? Of just like, I don't deserve this. So it is fascinating. And I agree. I love the point that you made. It's not just like, look back at it and, all your worries and your anxieties and your diagnoses will go away if you just see how far you've come. It's not that at all. It's just another tool in the belt. Yeah.
What was your process like to find a counselor? I'm curious about that.
Finding a counselor is like dating, right?
Yeah.
Because you get on the call. And for me, since I do a little bit of coaching and since I have a master's in counseling myself, and because I know that I have a decently high EQ, or thought I had a decently high EQ, I was like, I want to find somebody who enjoys working with helpers.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a question that I would ask up top. I don't know why I've never had a male counselor before. I'd be fascinated to have one at some point, but I've just kind of gravitated towards women. I don't know why, but that's been a fact. So that was the thing. But then asking conversations, but unfortunately, right? Selfishly, unfortunately, it took a while to finally get some of these intro meetings going because of, fortunately, more people are turning to mental health and more people are seeking it. And that's beautiful. From a selfish perspective, I'm like, well, I want to see a counselor tomorrow. I got shit going on right now. Right. Like, but at the same time, it's a really beautiful thing that more people are seeing the viability and using the resources. And hopefully insurance companies will continue to get their shit together more and more around how powerful it is.
Yeah. So. Did you use like a psychologytoday.com to find somebody, or were you just like, let me reach out to the network and see what comes back? Like, let me throw out some feelers type of deal.
Yeah, I'm cheap, so I wanted to use someone in my health insurance. And so I went through here in Minnesota, we have something called Alina. So I went on their website, and then I cross-referenced that website with Psychology Today, or I looked up. Yeah, I'm a guy who reads the reviews, right?
Review guy. Yeah, I think we all are now. We live in a review world.
Yeah, exactly. So I, anybody I found that I was intrigued by, I looked them up on a couple other sites just to see if there were reviews or thoughts or whatever about them. But I didn't necessarily care if they had a PsyD or a doctor in social work or MSW or anything like that, right? Like if you're on this website, I assume you're pretty good.
Amen. Yeah. What about vulnerability? You talked about that as something that you specialize in. Talking to somebody like a counselor or opening up to your wife or anybody else, like even this conversation now, like how important is vulnerability and how have you cultivated it? How have you developed the skills? That's what I should say.
How to be more vulnerable?
Yeah. And where does somebody start in that journey? If they're like listening and they're like, everything that James is talking about resonates with me, from the self-esteem to the desire to be liked, to the perfectionism, to the ADHD, to the anxiety. Like, I just don't know, but I like to keep it in. Like, that feels safe. Yeah. How does somebody start that process?
Yeah. For sure. I mean, it's scary, right? Vulnerability is scary. We're told that vulnerability equals weakness. Right? But if vulnerability equals weakness, then why is it so damn hard? Right? Because let's be honest, brother, right? It's easier to not ask for help than it is to ask for help. It is easier to avoid and compartmentalize than it is to own and confront. And we are wired to be efficient beings. So we choose the easy way, right? It's fact, like we as men, like, we crave belonging, yet we run from love because love is hard, right? But if we're just kind of hanging out with each other, then that's good enough, right? But so anyway, sorry, I'm ranting right now.
I was vibing. I was gonna let you keep going. I mean, hit a rant, bro. Go off.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to how does one be more vulnerable, I think first off, what we think about when we hear vulnerability is like, okay, everybody, I'm just going to share and dump all my insecurities out, right? Like, is that vulnerability? Sure. But Brene Brown talks about this. Other people talk about this, where sharing your vulnerability and sharing your story for the sake of sharing your story isn't necessarily vulnerability.
Right.
If you're sharing it as a way to heal from it, then that's not necessarily the best time to share it, right? And they say, I think Brene says this, and Dr. Brene, we're not on a first name basis. Dr. Brene Brown shares this someday, bro. That's my goal. I have a goal to meet her in 5 years. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm figured out. But still,
the universe is going to open up for you, brother. I'm sending good vibes your way.
Keep saying it out loud. So yeah, 5 years. I want to have coffee with her. So, but a lot of people talk like share from your scars, not your wounds. And I get that. Yes. It's powerful. I understand how it's important to teach. It's easier to teach if you've been through it, if you've gotten through it, if you've figured it out.
Yeah.
Where I think that hurts us, particularly men, is that men are taught to be internal processors. I think we're getting better with men. I don't think men are necessarily just taught. I don't think men are no longer taught that they can't have feelings or can't show emotions. I think we're getting better there. And there are certain cultures that are lagging more than others for their own reasons, not as an insult, just as a fact. But either way, it's fascinating since especially for men as internal processors, that means that we're supposed to present our product, not our process, right? Don't hit me with your problems, hit me with the final result, right? It's not what are you going through, is what did you go through and how did you overcome or how did you handle it?
Right.
And I see the beauty in that. There's power in that, but there's also a lot of being alone in that.
Yes.
It's super lonely.
Yes.
And so do I think we need to immediately start sharing once we go through something? No, but I don't think we need to cross the finish line before we go back and help people run the race. Right.
Yes.
I think we can help people out along the way. And sometimes vulnerability, like you said, even though whether you frame this question, what if somebody's struggling with anxiety or perfectionism or ADHD or low self-esteem or any of these things that you're going through, James, how would you encourage them to be more vulnerable? What I just did and what you do, Zach, is how you do that.
Yeah.
We share our story, right? Because we create moments where people feel like they're not alone, or maybe they don't have it all figured out, but right now they're enough, or right now they're okay, or right now it's like, I'm good, right? I'm on a path and I need to recognize that I'm on the path. I'm not stuck. So sharing your story can be sometimes a really powerful way. So there are people in our lives that are going through things. And where are some of those moments where we can be like, it's so funny you're going through that. I've been through something similar.
Right.
But we're not sharing it so that person can then help us.
Yes.
That's where vulnerability, that's where we got to start watching it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're sharing it to be like, you're not alone. And so we ask people, tell me about what's going on with you. That's so funny. That's happened to me. But I want to hear more about you. Right.
Yes.
And throw it back to them. Don't steal it. Don't stormtrooper the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the moments. And I think not everybody deserves to hear our story. right? Don't walk into your next conference room and be like, buckle up, everybody. You're about to catch all these feels, right? Like, no,
Right.
not everybody deserves it, but we all know some people who are patient, who are good listeners.
Yeah.
And those are the individuals that we also, whenever we talk to somebody or decide to share, we need to set expectations in that conversation.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, I just need you to hear me. I need to get some stuff off my chest. It's not about you. It's about me. But like with setting those expectations for how people can help us, people fucking love that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're all just sitting around here being like, it's okay. It'll get better. Right. Yeah. It's like, I don't need that right now. I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to do this. I just need you to be here with me. And sometimes I just need you to be like, yo, this sucks. Right. And so I think in the way that we practice vulnerability, we also need to be clear on what we would like in return. Not the exact words, but how we would like to be served. Right? Like, hey, I need someone to play devil's advocate. I need someone to help me fix this. I need someone to just hit me with a dump of empathy and just be in it with me for a minute. Right?
Yeah.
Like I need someone to ask me more follow-up questions to get me to think more deeply about what I'm going through, right? Yeah. Being able to name all that stuff is beautiful, but oftentimes we just dump things on people. They don't know how to help us, so they help us the way they would want to be helped.
Right.
And which is not their fault. That's how we're wired.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was a bit of I got a little ranty and a little rambly, but you're with me on this.
Hell no, I've been scribbling over here because, I mean... you touched on so many things, and when you talked about that product versus process, that was like, I loved that so much because I completely agree with that. And it was funny, Kate and I, my wife, we're watching, we just friggin' got to episode 5 and finished it, so now we have to wait on Hulu for I think it's The Woman from Plainview, or it's that show. Okay. It's whatever that show is.
Yeah. And it's one of your big sponsors of the podcast, clearly.
Exactly. Yeah. Hulu, yeah. Huge sponsor of the podcast. Shout out Hulu. Hulu has sports. I think they paid me to say that. So anyways, no, they in the show, it's basically about, long story short, it's about a young man who takes his life, takes his own life. So death by suicide. And the role that the girlfriend at the time played in that. And so I'm not going to do any spoilers. But the bigger thing that I like about the show that my wife and I were talking about yesterday that was interesting was this theme of product versus process. So in particular scenes, there is the girlfriend mourning the death of her boyfriend. And in those scenes, she's surrounded by trusted friends and family. There's hugs, there's tears, there's some expression of what's going on. I wouldn't say that the show like kind of demonstrates her having a well thought out process of like, this is how I need to be supported right now. But she's in her process, right? She's going through the grieving process and she's not alone through it. But it's, again, to your point, it's with trusted individuals. And then there are scenes in the show where the boyfriend, while he's still alive, is in his process. And there are scenes where he's opening up to his father and his mother. And what we both kind of observed is that, to use your words, it was a much more product-focused conversation. Mm-hmm. There weren't boundaries being set. There weren't expectations being set. And there was almost kind of this cold, like there's a scene in particular where the dad is like, your mother it would be important for your mother if you continued therapy. And the son is like, no, I'm okay. Like, I don't need therapy. And he goes, well, it would be really important to your mother. And the son turns to the dad and goes, well, would it be important to you? And there's a long pause. And in the show, of course, I know it's a show, but this is a lot of people's reality. The dad goes, like I said, it would be really important for your mother if you kept going to therapy. That was an opportunity for the dad to be in the process with the son, trusted advisor. That was a moment, right, that he could have had with his son to take it a layer deeper, to get into the process with somebody that the son clearly trusts, right? And it's like what you said, you don't need to air your story out to every single person you meet, but you also shouldn't be alone in the process. I mean, that's, why the title of the podcast is You're Not Alone. The title of my book is You're Not Alone, because that element matters. And so I do think that product versus process and that mentality switch that you talked about is so important. And then once you're in your process and you're surrounded by your loved ones, telling them, hey, this is what I need in this particular engagement right now.
Yeah.
And laying out those examples.
Yeah. Right. I mean, the thing that kills most relationships is holding people accountable to expectations they didn't know you set for them.
Yes.
Right. And that's something that also hurts relationships in these moments.
Yep.
Is that, you share things and you already, and I get it. I get it because it already took a lot of courage. It already took a lot of chutzpah, right? to get it all out there and be like, I'm just going to freaking share this. Now I'm supposed to go one step further and tell you how I need you to react to me, right? Like that takes a lot of gall, but it is the final piece of it that would be so wildly helpful, because I believe that most humans are innately good and most humans love helping other humans.
Yeah.
And most humans don't know how to help other humans.
Yes.
In the way that they want to be helped. They only know the way we want to be helped. Yeah. And again, like I said earlier, it doesn't make us bad people. But on my greatest days, when my wife is telling me something that's going on in her life, I'll ask her, what do you need from me right now? Do you need a devil's advocate? Do you need someone to push back? Do you need just empathy? Do you need this? Right. But like on those days where I'm tired, I'm not paying attention or whatever, right? Like all of a sudden I'm just like, well, just freaking do this. You're fine. Right. Like, and that's not helpful. Right. I got a master's in counseling. I'm a coach. I'm right. Like, but that's all these tool sets that are at my disposal that have been trained into me, but I act instinctually.
I'm so glad that you said it, because I was thinking in my head, I'm going to have to throw that in there too, because in the last 3 weeks, there's been an instance where I supported my wife in the way that talking about, hey, what do you need? And then there was definitely a recent one where I fumbled the bag. I didn't do it right. No. And it was instinctual. This is what you need to do. Like, this is how you should do it. And it resulted in some tears from her, just mostly because she's like, I don't feel heard. Yeah. I don't feel heard from you right now. And it's like, to your point, the listening, that is more than half the battle when it comes to supporting somebody who's opening up.
Yeah.
That's like what people want to feel.
It's on both sides of the communication train, right? It's on your wife's side, my wife's side, whoever the hell we're talking to side, to be like, here's what would be helpful for me right now.
Yeah.
Here's how I would like to be helped.
Yes.
Right.
True.
And it's also on the listener's side, knowing that sometimes when someone's in it, they're not thinking about all that kind of stuff. They're just in it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's on both parties. If both parties can try to remember, then we're going to hit it more times than not.
Yes.
Because it's also, yes, Zach, you could say, I missed the bag on that one, and you could beat yourself up about it. And sure, did you? Fine. Right. But like, she also missed an opportunity for clarity.
True. Yep.
But clarity, I don't know, we just want people to get us. We just want people to be in it with us. We just want people to, especially the people that love us the most, that are in our daily lives. We're just like, I just figured you knew, right? And that's I get that. We probably do know more than the random stranger. Yeah. But we are also still dealing with our own stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
It's so true. Man, that product versus process, I'm going to go back to that a lot, I think, in just thinking about my interactions and how we start to shift the culture around mental health. I mean, which is work that you're doing. And obviously you've got programs that address that. I know we've gone over time by a bit. I always like to be respectful of your time, because I could go on for forever. I'm enjoying this conversation. Is there anything that kind of you felt you wanted to touch on? Anything that you wanted to share in terms of that Men Work in Progress program? Any key components from that program that you think's valuable for people to know on this episode today?
No, I mean, I think we hit a lot of it. Honestly, yeah. I mean, I think we as men as I mentioned, we crave belonging, yet we run from love, right? So we join teams, we join organizations, we join crews, we join whatever it is, right? But do we let those individuals then love us? And it's tough also because as we know that making friends as an adult is weird. And
it is the weirdest.
And so we no longer have like those teams or those clubs or those whatever from college sometimes.
Yeah.
And so therefore we have even less support sometimes around us. And maybe we can find it at a gym or find it at a golf club or find it at maybe, there's, if you're a bourbon drinker, there's like local bourbon drinking clubs or whatever it is, right? There's organizations that are out there. It doesn't just apply to college students, but finding and joining organizations is powerful. But no matter what, letting those organizations love you is also powerful.
Yeah.
It's important. It's the next step. I think, I talk to men about why we choose cool over great and how have we decided what cool means. And how did we decide that cool means doing it on our own? How do we decide that cool means I'm going to try to impress somebody and get a laugh as opposed to say a nice thing or do the right thing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
This is something I still very much struggle with, right? I teach things I need to hear, and in hopes that some of the breadcrumbs that I've learned and that I've left behind are still around for people to pick up. And so, I'm a work in progress as a man, but I think, and these are some of the reasons why, is that I'm a comedian, right? I want the laugh. I don't think about the reactions of the laugh or the consequences of the laugh sometimes, right? I don't think about, the fact that I'm just so damn witty, Zach,
just goat status.
It's just tough, man.
Just blessed.
Hard.
EQ
it's hard
through
having
the roof,
all this wit.
Witty as hell, EQ through the roof. I mean, what does the guy not have? But no, you're so right. I mean, and I think though the fact that you say that you're a work in progress and you're very open about that is actually one of the cornerstones of a healthy man. I think, because anybody who I've ever met that male wise, I should say, well, I guess it goes both ways. Like the person who thinks they've got it figured out, all of it figured out, they know all the answers to everything that could possibly be known. I think that's a dangerous place to live. I think it's a lot more freeing to be like, yeah, I'm a work in progress. There's definitely a lot of shit that I don't know. And go ahead, like educate me, teach me something. Like what do I need to know? What could I become better at? And kind of turning inwards a little bit. So I think just even saying that is so important. But you are right too. I find that interesting. You say that about men join teams and organizations, but we don't let the members of that team love on us.
Mm-hmm.
I still to this day I notice some of that discomfort when I'm feeling. And again, just for anybody listening, obviously this isn't like romantic love. And even if that was the case from a male, that's fine too. That's not how I orient myself, but that shouldn't make me uncomfortable. I feel like women are a lot better at kind of accepting that intimacy might not be affection, receiving affection, which is a form of receiving that love, I think, which comes in a lot of different forms, compliments, just
true
support.
Sisterhood, right?
Right.
Yeah. What does true brotherhood look like? Right. It doesn't look, I mean, it's not us dying on the battle. It's not us marching up the field and, scoring the touchdown. It's not us whatever, right? Like, yes, that is part of brotherhood. But like, I don't know, when I have the opportunity to talk to a number of fraternities sometimes around the country, right? And I tell them brotherhood is your ability to do dumb shit with each other and do deep shit with each other also. It's got to be both.
It's got to be
That's
both.
true brotherhood. Otherwise it's not brotherhood if you're not doing both.
Yeah. I like that you say that too, because since I work in the Greek space as well, I do notice that while that certainly is changing, the messaging matters so much. Like what they're hearing from you, what they're hearing from me, it's so important because I do think left unguided, it does steer in one direction. Mm-hmm. And it leans heavily in that. Let's go do stupid shit together. That's what guys do, right? Like
it's easy, it's safe.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no vulnerability in that.
Correct.
There's no vulnerability in that at all. So to wrap up the podcast interview, what is one piece of advice you would give someone who is right at the start of their mental health journey?
Right at the start of your mental health journey, what's one piece of
Or in
advice?
it. Or in it, wherever.
Yeah. Great question. I think a simple piece of advice is that we all, humans, since the dawn of time, have been great storytellers, right? Humans are great storytellers. And so what stories are you telling yourself that you believe? Knowing that you have the hand that is controlling the pen that is writing your story. And so when it comes to that, you got to do what's right for you, right? If they're, a lot of times when we think about asking people for help, we ask individuals who are in our patterns with us. And I love my mother to death. She's incredible and one of my role models, right? But there are times where I tell my mom, I'm happy. I'm going through something. I'm unhappy. I don't know what's happening, whatever. And she, with all the love in the world, with all the greatest intent in the world, she said, well, James, you used to be happy. Why don't you just go back to being happy? Right. And like, hey, Mom, thanks so much. You let me know who to make the check out to, Mom. Wow, that's good. That was good. Right. And like, but that's with all the love in the world because she's in the pattern with me.
Yep.
And so talking to somebody who's not in our patterns with us is really, really powerful because they can help us more acutely, accurately, and efficiently name our patterns. They will see them. They will see them sometimes before we even see them. And so that is the power of counseling, of mental health, and maybe it's not in, it doesn't have to be mental health. Maybe you're a person of faith, but it's got to be someone, it's got to be someone who is willing to call you out and with all the love in the world.
Yeah.
And tell you, this is a pattern I'm seeing.
Yep.
You want to talk about it? We can't beat ourselves up for our patterns. We can only acknowledge them and choose to do something about them.
I love that. Acknowledge them and choose to do something about them. Easy for me to say, as well as you are the hand writing your narrative, writing your story. I love that. What are stories that you are telling yourself that you believe, both good and bad? Yep. And I think we touched on that. We touched on that today in terms of some of the stories we've become aware of that we tell ourselves. And so becoming aware of it, maybe it's an outside person like you talked about, counselor, somebody in the faith community, somebody that cares about you, maybe not in those patterns with you, so that you can start to break some of those patterns. So I love that. I think it's really, really sound advice. And James, I appreciate you, man, so much. It was great to have you on the podcast. I think people are going to really, really benefit from this episode. Where can people connect with you? How can they tap into James? How can they get a part of your programs, your coaching, the book, all of that?
Yeah, brother. So, what I'll first say is I found the tests that I took. There's a whole bunch of them, and I put them in the chat for you, so you can upload those. But they're the Bender Gestalt Visual Motor Test, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, the Connors Adult ADHD Rating Scale. These are like 6 or 7 of them. One of them that was actually done by my wife, the Adult Behavior Checklist. That was rude. But yeah, there's a whole bunch. There's like 7 or 8 tests that I took. So Zach can put those in the show notes for y'all. But
just saved them.
But yeah, I'm James T. Robo. ROBO, James T. Robo, all over the internet. Feel free to connect me on LinkedIn, Instagram, jamestrobo.com, whatever it is. Let's connect. And I'm someone else who's on your team. So let's find each other.
Yes, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Look him up, James T. Robo, everywhere online. And I look forward to bringing you on for future episodes, my guy.
Whenever you want, my guy. Always a pleasure to hang out.
All right. Appreciate you.
Just keep that hair crunchy.
Hey, you already know. Crispy like bacon.